listening to yet another episode of Smash the Bug. I'm your host, Joseph Maxwell, and I'm super excited, as always, to bring along a very special guest. I have followed this person's his work over the course of, it's probably been at least 5 years now. And everything that I have seen from this person is just on the money, right on, perfect information. Because if nothing else, he's focusing on performance in Magento. So who better to have on than the king of performance optimizations in Magento? And you can't see him, but he's laughing right now. But it's true. It's true. You're going to see this as you listen to what he has to say here today. We're actually going to talk about a module that he's built. Before we jump in and I make my formal introduction, make sure that you have subscribed on YouTube to the SwiftAuto Inc. channel. We are also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure that you subscribe to Smash the Bug on one of those your favorite syndication channels there. So, without further ado, I'd love to bring on Ivan from Netherlands, and he is a one-man show right now, ecom dev. So make sure if you see the word ecom dev, you probably is synonymous with Ivan, and he does really good stuff. So let's bring him on and ask him, I guess, what he does. That's always my favorite question to do. Ivan, good to have you on, my friend. So, welcome.
I'm a little bit mixed with the camera. Sorry.
Really?
It seems like I'm moving too much in a camera, so it's a little bit not capturing correct.
Oh,
so,
that's good.
The thing is, I'm at least 5 years, but honestly, I'm with Magento since 2007. So I've been in a team together with Dmitry and Boris and other guys. We were 5 core devs in Ukraine.
Very nice.
Basically, at the beginning.
So you were a core dev of Magento 1?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So then you go way back. Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah. And actually, it's a very funny story because I was hired into Magento company as Adobe Flex developer. So if you know, there was this Adobe Flex framework.
Yeah.
Where you could build UI components in Flash. So I'm responsible for terrible uploader in Magento admin in Magento 1. So that's something I built from scratch, basically.
Well,
at that time.
I think everyone in the community agree you have well redeemed yourself and you are very well forgiven because you have kind of done your penance now with your optimization stuff on the other side. So, we can just kind of put that behind us and look forward to talking to the real Ivan here.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, because I started with PHP my career a long time ago. So I even when I was in high school, I was doing some projects in Perl. Then when I went to universities, the teacher told me, "Hey, you should try PHP and MySQL and build for us a search database because you need to crawl all our faculty websites and you need to create for us a search tool where we can just search stuff." So
there you go.
I've been busy with performance stuff for quite a while already, even before joining Magento.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Ivan, what do you do now? What are some of the typical problems or projects that you're most often dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, mostly I work with European customers, so I'm not that much of a developer who works with US companies because, first of all, I'm based in the Netherlands, so it's one of the advantages of being here because you meet more European customers, and mostly all of my customers are coming through acquaintances because someone recommended me to another merchant and so on. So majority of the merchants come to me with the problems like, hey, we have 10 million records in price index and we cannot do stuff with it anymore because our database just cannot handle it. And then you try to find, let's say, esoteric solutions to that problem by modifying the indexer itself and reducing the number of data that is populated there. However, it's probably a different topic for a different show to talk about actually inefficiency of the database structures within Magento itself.
Yeah.
Especially for European market, because in Europe, every single country want to sell to other country within the European Union. So everyone wants to have a store in a language with the prices specifically for that country.
Oh, really?
So,
okay. Well, that would definitely blow up the price index.
Yeah, it blow up quite a lot in majority of the cases. So a lot of the times people just choose from the beginning of the project the wrong structure. So they decide, hey, we just create a bunch of websites and a bunch of store views for each language. For each country, we create a website. And then, first of all, they have to import data from PIM systems and so on for every single language within a website. It's one thing. And another thing, if it's a customer who actually manages products himself or herself in the Magento admin, you can imagine how much extra work they have to do.
For sure.
with such setup.
So I have to ask you real quick, do you find that you're able to reduce the number of like websites down to and be able to just use store views, or is it pretty much always going to be websites in the majority of those cases, like in Europe?
Yeah, so in most of the cases, like we still need to have some kind of a thing like that. I can tell you actually a very interesting story where I was doing it for one of the Magento 1 customers. I think it was like 3 years ago. The customer wanted to have a website where he has 200 different domain names.
Okay, that's a lot.
And every single domain name was on the same market in the same country, and between those domains, like they shared some of the products that were working on all of the domains. Like let's say you have laptops, you have laptop accessories, and you have let's say chargers, right? And you can have both of those products being cross-referenced between a laptop domain name, laptop accessories domain name, smartwatches domain name, and so on. So you would have kind of large database with the products. Right. And on top of that, you want to have a separate homepage for each of them, and you want to have a different category structure for each of them. And that kind of a problem came to me, and when the customer came to me with this problem, I was thinking like, hey, this is not something that we can really deal with websites and store views. So what we decided to do with them at that time is actually create a new entity called domains, and then create also a logic for matching the domain name to the store view, and inside of it select a first level category within the store root. So you have store root category, and then you have first level category. So you use one of them as the source of the product for that domain. And then you have another entity that also has configuration values.
Okay.
And you can create own configuration paths that will be available for a customer to edit for the specific domain. And what I like about Magento, even Magento 1, at that time, it was possible just to override configuration values at the runtime.
Okay.
And override the current root category at the runtime. And basically Magento, with a couple of modifications, was serving the data within the same store view, but from different store roots, and modifying the base URLs and everything based on the domain name you've matched in a request.
That's really fascinating. That's really cool. I like that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Very nice. Yeah.
So
that's really good.
It's something I think is very important for most of the Magento developers to understand at the beginning of the project, what is the actual data impact of the data that your customer has.
That's right.
Because if your customer to you comes, hey, I just have, let's say, 3 stores and that's all, it's okay to go with GVS. But if customer comes to you and say, hey, I want to sell you in every country and I want to have separate prices for every country and languages, and maybe I also have different assortments based also on catalog segmentation, on different domain names,
that's a bit of a
you
problem.
Don't have any other option.
Yeah, that's definitely a bit of a problem. I get that. Well, and then speaking of that, I put out a bit of a slightly controversial post saying, let's not use product repository unless absolutely necessary in Magento 2. And I can't remember if I came across yours or if you posted to that, or somehow in that process, I became aware of your Magento 2 product preloader project that you've been working on. so our listeners can go and check this project out. It's github.com/ecomdev, ECOMDEV. So ecomdev /Magento2-product-preloader. So Magento2-product-preloader. And yeah, so I guess maybe you want to just give me a brief overview as far as how that works and how you're solving performance issues with this mechanism.
Yeah, so the first thing that I usually do with a project, I usually run it through the profiler and see, first of all, category pages and then product pages, and see what kind of repeating offenders in database queries are. So if query is executed more than once, it means, there is some kind of a problem happening. So my basic idea with it was that I want to minimize amount of things developers have to do in order to detect which kind of product data they're working with in order to preload the data. The main idea of preloading is to basically hook into the places where Magento uses a product repository for accessing the data, or any other repository like stock repository or price database queries with loading all the simple products of a configurable and so on. So to tackle those small parts and write a preloader that would be executed when specific product collection is loaded. So there's like 3 different kinds of them. There is one for listings, where you have products that are accessing the data from indexes, like price index, stock index, and so on.
Okay.
And then there is another one like shopping cart, where you know that you need to have a real price data. You don't want to access data from indexes. And then there is other for all the other cases for loading collection of products. So instead of, let's say, going on into Magento and doing backward and compatible changes by breaking the way how Magento interacts with the database, we just pinpoint places where Magento is slow and preloading the data for those places and just replacing it with a plugin around it.
That's really interesting. I love your thinking there, keeping in line with what is existing, like making sure that we're not going to cause any problems down the road. What is involved with actually then creating this? Do you have like a sample project or something that I can, reference other people to say, hey, here is the actual, here's a sample piece of code that you need to implement in this way?
Yeah, there is even conference talk from Meet Magento UK and Meet Magento Poland, where I speak on the actual implementation of an example. I took as an example implementation of retrieving product prices for configurables. So let's say you have a category and you have 20 configurables, and each of them has, let's say 100 simple products assigned to them.
Right.
So the standard Magento would take like 4 seconds to render that page, but with that one you can achieve like 400 milliseconds.
Nice.
Instead of 4 seconds.
That's outstanding. Good job.
Yeah, but it just looking at the profiler. So basically, what I usually do, I just look at the profiler and see, okay, where our queries are executed, and I pinpoint that place and replace that piece of code that is executed with my logic around it.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of cherry picking the places where I want to fix the performance. There is a lot more places to improve, but it helps me already to achieve something that is impossible to achieve by submitting pull request to the core, because usually fixing those kind of issues that are existing right now in category pages are not as simple to push because of backward compatibility issues, because Magento just having so many things going on there is that, there's
been a lot of conversation about that here recently, hasn't there?
Yeah. Especially I had some experience with pull requests that were open for 1 year, and in the end, like, they were merged, but in the end they were not merged. So
that'd be frustrating.
It's fun.
And that, and unfortunately, that would really discourage the desire to contribute if you know that your pull request is going to be open for a year, and then it's still in flux as far as whether it's going to be merged or not after that.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest issues I have with current open source process itself, because I understand like there is checks in place and processes that they have to follow. But honestly, I feel it's like a huge bureaucratic machine that doesn't produce any value in the end, because like every piece of code that gets submitted, it just gets chewed up by this machine and just thrown away in the end.
Yeah.
Because everyone who wants to contribute to Magento, they want to see some feedback loop that, like you contribute, it gets merged, you are satisfied. Mm-hmm. If you contribute, it's not getting merged, and you have to go around and around to try to find why someone else's tests are failing, why there is this thing that they have concern with. However, you don't have access to the piece of code that they have concern about, or you have a different opinion with an architect within Adobe itself, who has different opinions about the things. So it's in that exhausting, and you just understand, it's better just to build a modular customizations around Magento and fix this problem than actually go through this painful process of contribution.
Yes. I understand that. And that's the approach I've taken. And I'll be really curious to see how the whole the Magento Association, the Open Source Task Force, how that plays out, as well as just the Magento fork, Mage fork, or whatever they're calling it. Like that, there's a lot of stuff that's happening right now. And I think time will tell. It's a cliche term, but I think it really will tell. Is either of those going to get any momentum, or is it just going to be something, the task force to solve a problem, and everything all dies out, we're all hunky-dory, it's all fine? Or is there what's going to see progress and what's not going to see progress?
I'm actually on Mage-OS team right now on the technical part of
very good. Okay. So. Well, sounds like we should have you on for a talk on that, and I'm really curious. So let's see if we can get another something booked on the calendar to just dive into that, and I'll ask you a whole bunch of questions.
But just in a simple sentence, I think this Adobe and Mage-OS initiative actually can coexist easily together. So it's not something like, hey, we're just gonna go and hack around Magento core ourselves and do ourselves, management of a repository and processing pull requests and so on. We just want to build something lighter for smaller merchants and based on mirror of actual Magento repositories that Adobe are releasing. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that, hey, we are just copying the code, modifying it ourselves, and just releasing it. We just repackaging it. I would say it like this.
Okay, well that's interesting. Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to the whole original contribution process. If you were to give like one or two suggestions for like this is if these one or two suggestions were implemented, it would make contributing to the actual Magento core itself easier, more fulfilling, whatever.
I honestly think it's quite hard to solve. First of all, from an organizational perspective, because from the original days of Magento never being completely open source from point of view of the way how you develop stuff in core. Mm-hmm. So the core team is quite disconnected from the community. So in the end, it's nice to have good ideas from clean architecture and so on, but you also need to have this connection from small merchants. Mm-hmm. And mostly what I see with open source as an issue itself is that there is a huge barrier of stuff being merged. So the feedback loop is critical, and majority of other open source products, all the development is happening within open GitHub. Mm-hmm. Nothing is going away. People create branches on the same repository by forking it and then creating branch and then creating pull requests. And if internal process of Magento itself would happen like as a separate pull request to the main repositories that they are using for community contribution, it would already tell them what's wrong with the community contribution process, because they would have the same obstacles as we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. That is good feedback. It'll be interesting. Like I'm very invested in this myself, and I want to see this move forward. And I know the community is very deeply invested in merchants, and I really believe that Adobe is. Like, again, even from a financial perspective, they have to be. Like, they want to continue growing Adobe Commerce. So it's just aligning on these expectations is really tough, and I'll be very curious to see how that works out.
Yeah, for me, honestly, like majority of my customer base are not multi-million dollar companies that can just burn money. Mm-hmm. Usually I have merchants, like that have turnover of, let's say, 9 million euros a year. Like mm-hmm. I have big customers as well, but majority of my customer base is actually small to medium business.
That's right.
And those people, like, they're my bread and butter. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, saying no attention in that direction, because honestly, like, all of the things that are released right now, Page Builder was kind of a good thing that they did in open source.
Yes,
it's hats off, like a great job. But in general, I think majority of the things that small merchants are struggling with are already shown in issues tab on GitHub and on all of the pull requests created by developers like me who work directly with merchants and have problems that are basically hard to reproduce even for core team, because core team doesn't have the same kind of exotic data that we are dealing with.
That's a big deal. That is a big deal. It's a huge deal. And one thing, there's so much we could talk about. But yeah, I totally agree on that. Like, that is a really big deal. And I think they work at that more on the commerce side. But still, it's like what you're saying, it's open source and there is not that good feedback loop. You see every ticket basically, I don't remember the who you ping, but basically give me a 2.4 instance and it comes 2.4 with, I think, sample data. And it's like, yeah, it's very hard to reproduce with some of those, but it's when you start getting those outside problems that they're going to happen. Like, everything weird is going to be thrown at you eventually in a year or two. I mean, it's just stuff's going to happen. So yeah, this is wonderful.
Also, like Magento merchants, they're living on Magento for a long time. So some of the merchants had their data migrated from 2.0 to 2.1 to 2.2 to 2.3.
That's right.
And so on. Mm-hmm. And Magento doesn't have those kind of test cases at all. They never have a database of a merchant that was on 2.0 and migrated all the way through to 2.4 in order to reproduce an issue that is a result of actual migration scripts that were executed.
That's a very good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. And stuff happens. Yeah, so there's enough that's going on between different versions that it's going to happen. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And I understand also from point of view of core team, let's say you have a QA that validates a ticket that gets submitted. Mm-hmm. I understand that part as well, because it's hard for you to reproduce this issue as well. So basically, yeah, you try to reproduce it, you were unable to, so you notify, I cannot reproduce, I ask for more details. But merchant decided, okay, I already reported this issue, what else do you need? Because for them, issue is obvious, yes, because it happens. And there is a little bit, I think, of a gap in research department. So if Magento would spend more time actually to research those issues instead of just trying to reproduce it based on the data, because sometimes some issues already come with the fix, with explanation where the problem is. Mm-hmm. But because QA just looks at steps to reproduce, no technical person sees what's actually submitted, and let's say developer, by looking at the ticket, would be able just to see right away, yeah, there is a problem,
Exactly, yeah.
But as well, I see as a problem in general with company and open source product not being agile. Like, mm-hmm, you have to go through a very long process to get something in.
Sure.
And usually, I understand when companies spends most of the resources where the money is. Like they make money from commerce products, they make money from the Adobe Experience Cloud and so on, and all of those integrations to get merchants in. So it's understandable that as a company they focus on that one. But in my opinion, the way forward is to have a smaller product that is still based on the same things that are released by the main company, but that can evolve faster and bring changes specifically for the market it tailors the product for. Like for a small merchant to be able to easily install Magento, to be able to host it on smaller setup, like to not have this crazy set of SQS and Elasticsearch and all of the other services you have to deal with in order to run a single store shop. So there should be a easy way to deal with the things for a smaller merchant. And I understand, for instance, that for Adobe it's not a priority because it's not their direct revenue generation. Like it's indirect because those merchants will grow and will become in future customers of Adobe. But those are not direct money, and sure, you wouldn't spend majority of your investments there. But there is huge community of people who are ready to spend their time and do this stuff. And there's also companies that are ready to like sponsor this stuff, like contribute stuff to be able to control the process because their business relies on it. A lot of small agencies here, and even not small, even big agencies here in Europe, they really rely on SME market. They're not relying on US market to survive. So for them, it's very critical to have companies that are, succeed together with them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, this is good, Ivan. Thank you for sharing, talking candidly about some of the challenges ultimately the community's having, performance. Like this is, it was a bit of a sip from the fire hose for me, and which is a good thing. And we'll definitely have to continue the conversation because there's a whole bunch more we to dive into. Yeah, this has been good. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. If you'd like to learn more about performance, you can also look at our old recordings with Eric Haleman.
Yeah, those are good. Yes. What was the name of that podcast again?
Load in the Loop.
Load in the Loop. Yes, that is right. Absolutely. Go well, basically what you guys did is you deconstructed websites. Eric Heilman at Mage Mojo, and you guys worked through specific websites that I don't know how they got submitted, but that were hosted on Mage Mojo platform. It wasn't Mage Mojo's that was the problem. It was these websites. You add crummy modules and all that stuff, and it could be the best hosting system in the world, and it's not going to still be able to support this. So you guys went through and broke that all down and figured out exactly what's going on. It was super good.
Yeah, it was very nice. Especially Blackfire gave us licenses to use on the show.
Nice.
So we were able to dive deep for the customers. We didn't fix actual issues except the first show we aired. And we actually fixed right away in OpenMage Magento 1 version and a bottleneck.
Nice.
That I've never even think about before, but that customer specifically was showing like 10,000 of products on category page, and because of that, reviews was acting crazy in loading data. So
nice.
There is some interesting stuff I can even learn from because on that show we had the possibility to see all the different merchants of different sizes.
Very well. Yeah. So make sure you subscribed also to Load in the Loop just listen to, if nothing else, to some of the episodes in the past. Those are super good. I learned a lot from them, and I highly recommend others listen to it as well. So thank you, Ivan, for get that name pronounced right. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm fine with Ivan.
Well, I kind of pronounce it 3 different ways so far, so that's really bad. That's really bad. But anyways, Ivan, I'm going to get this right. I'm going to get it right. So thank you for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here today. That was an absolute delight having Ivan here. I was like, wow. The depth of knowledge that guy has is phenomenal. And make sure that you subscribe or listen to whatever you want to do to his Load in the Loop. He does that with Eric Heilman, CEO of Mage Mojo. So they can deconstruct these websites really, really, really. I don't know how many reallys I need to put in front of that, but it's super good. Let's just put it that way. And so thank you for listening to Smash the Bug. It's been a pleasure having you as a participant of this show. And again, many thanks to Ivan for joining us here today.